2020 for the City of Apache Junction Parks and Recreation Committee Commission to order at 6:02 p.m. May we have roll call, Mary?
Yep. Commissioner Judy Bory.
Here.
Commissioner D.L. Kine.
Here.
Commissioner Luciano Buzan. Commissioner Frank Schoenbeck.
Here.
Commissioner Chairman Wayne Standage.
Here.
And Vice Chairman Heather Muller.
Here.
And Walker Walty is excused.
Yes. So
We have a quorum, sir.
We have a quorum. Our next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Our next item is acceptance of the agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion for that?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the agenda as written for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Okay, Luciano, thank you. You got them marked down, Mary?
Yep.
Okay. Next is the acceptance for the meeting of November 4th of 2020, our regular
We
meeting.
need a roll call vote.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. That's what I'm here
Roll
for, to
call
remind
vote
you.
for acceptance of the motion, please.
Vice Chairman Heather Muller.
Yes.
He's absent. Commissioner Judy Bory.
Yes.
Commissioner D.L. Kine.
Yes.
Commissioner Buzan? Yes, of course, because you seconded. Commissioner Schoenbeck?
Yes.
And Chairman Standage.
Yes.
It passes all in favor.
Okay.
It's approved.
Our next item will be acceptance of the minutes of November 4th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept that motion, the minutes of that meeting?
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Luciano. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Judy. And our next part is roll call vote for acceptance of the motion, please.
Okay. Chairman Wayne Standage?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Heather Muller?
Yes.
Commissioner Judy Bory?
Yes.
Commissioner D.L. Kine?
Yes.
Commissioner Luciano Buzan?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank Schoenbeck?
Yes.
All in favor, we have a unanimous vote to approve.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Our next item is Parks and Recreation Director's Report. Are you all ready, Liz?
I am. Thank you, Chairman Standage. I just have a quick few things on facilities and then on programs so that we can dedicate the rest of our time to some important information. So facilities update, you'd asked about BLM. Just wanted to share really quickly, and we'll have more details in the next couple of months. But we paid our first installment of the $20,000 for the pre-purchase process to begin, and we're working with BLM right now on some of those different steps. There's about 12 steps altogether that have to happen, and many of them can happen concurrently. Right now, they are working on the notice of realty action, which has to be released, and so that language and everything is going out. So there's really not a lot to tell, other than that we've begun, and we'll keep you apprised as we go. If there's some more substantial stuff, we'll share that at a future meeting. Dog park, we did not list that. That's just something else I just wanted to share with you. It's moving along. We've finalized construction documents. We are meeting this month to finalize some of our last fundraising efforts. And we hope that dog park plans will keep moving and that we'll be able to go out to bid end of spring, maybe summer, but it kind of just depends on how the funding source goes. So that's all that I have. I know we've talked extensively about the dog park in the past, but that's where we're at as of now. And then lastly, that's affecting facilities. Today, the governor did his most recent press briefing, and we did learn that there are going to be some additional mitigation efforts and mitigation requirements for events that are 50 and over. They're going to be placing some of those out there that we have to follow. And basically, the main thing that we'll have to be looking at is that agencies now, governmental agencies, before they can approve events of 50 or more, they must ensure that a COVID plan is in place, and then they must post that COVID plan on the agency's website. We have not even had a chance to start really looking at this or talking with our city attorney. We are already doing a little bit of that now as it goes, so I'm not sure how much it will affect us. But I just wanted you to be aware, we heard that maybe an hour before I got here, and so we looked it up quickly. Just want you to be aware that there might be some new things coming out with that. It doesn't mean we can't have them. It means that we have to ensure that there's other, now it's not just recommendations, now some of the things are some things that we really do need to make happen. So our team will start working on that next, and that completes the facilities update.
Okay. Did you have some program?
Yep, I will do the
Programs.
programs update next. So as you all heard before, the reverse light parade is this Saturday. So folks, again, they'll be driving in their car, and our light parade is stationary. It'll be the actual participants that will be driving. So North Apache Trail, we will have all of our stationary floats, so everybody who's decorated a float or a vehicle or whatever it might be, that will be on North Apache Trail instead in front of Flatiron. So starting at approximately 7 p.m., participants will be traveling one way on North Apache Trail. They'll be going towards one way there in front of Flatiron, traveling south. And then when they get to Old West Highway / Apache Trail, they'll turn right and be directed to go to some of the businesses and look and see all the lights. So we've been preparing a map. The Chamber of Commerce did their Jingle in the Junction, where the businesses that are going to be in the competition for the best lights display is going to be part of this event. And so we'll have a map with all of those businesses that are participating. And so our hope is that, folks will be able to come by and see some of the stationary floats and lit vehicles, and then be able to go throughout the city and visit all of the businesses that are lit up on that day. And then they'll be voting. That's the extent of that event. So just remember, as we do continue to modify our events, that is one of our big ones. The tree normally is lit December 1st. So if you happen to be downtown this last night, you would have seen our big tree is up, and the guys did a great job on that. So that's all ready to go. We have a long list of winter small group programming, so would definitely encourage you to check out our Facebook page. We have posted all of our upcoming winter break types of activities. And then the very last major event that's going on right now is our My Park, My Gym Fitness Challenge. So that has gone out to all the families. Instead of having each month our in-person running events, it's going to be a virtual series. But it's also basically every family that signs up, they'll get a booklet that talks about ways that you can use your park as a gymnasium, as a fitness, doing different types of fitness activities. The families that sign up, it's $10 per family for the whole 3 months. And then November, December, January, February, 4 months. And at the end, if they complete all of the challenges, then they'll win a shirt for doing that. So we're excited about that. I would definitely check that out, encourage people to participate. They can start at any point in time and just do the previous challenges. So even if they don't start until December or January, they'll be able to do all of the different various activities. That concludes my report on any of those. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is the MGC still going to be open now?
Yeah.
I mean, with the added requirements coming.
There's no new restrictions for gymnasiums or fitness centers. So, they'll continue with the same protocols we've been going. They've been doing really well. We're having, pretty good participation for that, as well as in various classes. We have increased our outdoor fitness classes also, so that way those that want to be a little bit more distance or out in open air and may have trouble with a mask, they can participate in some of those activities.
Okay.
Yes, senior center? Is it?
Senior center is the same as it has been, so we're doing our home-delivered meals and our drive-through meal pickup. Okay. We have, as we've said, talked to them a little bit about when do we think we might be able to get back. We are adding a little bit of programming where we will be doing a drive-in weekly bingo for our seniors. And so they can come and be in their car. We'll use our AM, FM transmitter setup and our big screen, and we'll be doing bingo for our seniors that want to participate in an activity. So thanks for reminding me, because that's actually a really cool new thing that's happening. We talked with the state, and our bingo license is good for them anywhere that's at the same address as the facility. So we'll be in the far parking lot by the library and have an opportunity for them.
That north end of the
Yes.
MGC.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have to be a senior?
You do not actually have to be a senior, so you'll keep an eye out for it, and you can certainly participate.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any others? Real quick. Nope. Okay. Thank you, Liz. We'll go to our next item, which is old business, but there is none. So now we will be down to new business, and Attorney Joel Stern will take over at this point. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Gonna make the magic happen.
Well, now, Joel, you got a clapper and a juror that are in your
That's right.
corner.
Well, thank you, everybody. And I think everyone has heard this before, except for Miss, is it Kine?
Yes. I have
Okay.
read all of it, though.
You have, really?
Yeah, it was in here.
Well, I'm going to test you.
I'm gonna test you. That's why I didn't read it to be tested, but I have read it.
So if I'm going too slowly or too fast, speak up. If you want to go fast and you want to get out of here by 7:15, that's probably not going to, or I'm sorry, 6:15, 7:15 maybe, but we can do this in a half an hour or however long you want to do it. Interrupt if there's any questions, please. So we'll start with Council Boards and Commissions Code of Conduct. This document is the council's document. I may have physically typed it up. It's only 4 pages long, but it was 12 pages originally. And it got whittled down after about 5 council sessions. And this came in, Code of Conduct was talked about many years ago. I remember in 2002, again in 2004, there were some issues that came up and they wanted to create a code of conduct, but it never got started. There was one that was maybe 5 or 6 sentences that really didn't do much for too many people, but it existed. There was one for planning and zoning, but it was pretty unenforceable. This is kind of unenforceable. However, this brings out the issues, which is very good to have. So this does apply to you. You are a board or commission. And I'm not going to read every line or word, but we can go through the highlights. Act in the public interest. Make sure the common goal is always have the public interest at heart, not personal interests. And this gets into conflicts of interest. That's the next item after this. So we won't talk about that right now. Comply with the law, that's a pretty easy one. And you make recommendations to the council. So you still have to follow the law, but you are a recommending body. You don't make the final decision. Be professional. And basically this had a lot of amendments during the 4 or 5 meetings that we had. However, this one comes from an attorney provision from the state bar on impartiality. The impartiality should not be reasonably questioned. You should not have any personal bias or prejudice concerning a party or representative, a staff member, or members of the public who support or oppose a party. If you have personal knowledge of facts that are in dispute that would not be known by staff or public at large, that could be an issue. The question is whether your impartiality might be questioned from the perspective of a reasonable person. So that's the outside looking in. So are you acting or talking impartially when you talk about these? You are being filmed right now. Electronically transmitted to other social platforms, Facebook, and others. People could look you up and they can see what you're saying on these issues or any issue. So be careful what you say in public. Public meetings and due process. This one really took a long time to go through. So you're going to stand there the whole night and go through these? Oh, you don't have to do that. Maybe it's easier if I get up there and do it. Do you want me to do that? Oh, okay. 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 The one that really came up was letter C. Be fair, objective, respectful at meetings and on social media. Letters to the editor. Well, we don't have papers anymore, or very littles, but when we do, those are LTEs. Articles are in other public communications. So what does that mean? That means if you're responding to a Facebook comment, and you say, "Hey, I'm Wayne Standage, and I'm the chair of the Park and Rec Board." Are you? You are, right?
Yes.
I thought so, okay. You haven't voted yet, right, for the new, that's the next meeting? Okay. Well, I don't know if you're still going to be the chair, but say you're the chair.
Doesn't matter.
And you say, well, that dog park idea, that's a stupid place for it. And in my capacity as the chair, I think we should have that at Prospector Park. Well, can you say that? You can, but you need to realize how's that going to look to the public, especially the social media public. You probably never have any public here, but they're watching and they're probably tuning in, and then she's going to get the calls. That's what's going to happen. So be careful on what you say.
So if we want Liz's phone to ring off the hook.
Then you make comments on social media. Yes.
Sorry, little comedy.
Going to advocacy. This one has come up. Do you lose your First Amendment rights by being appointed to this board? No, you don't. Kind of like in the last example. Do you have a right to say what you want about certain items? You do. I would not recommend that you say, I'm Wayne Standage and I am the chair of. You can just say, I am Wayne Standage. Or I'm Wayne. This is Wayne. And I think the location of the dog park should be changed. But people know that you are a member of the board, so be careful with that. I wouldn't do that, but can you? There's a First Amendment. You don't lose your First Amendment rights, but when you start to abuse or use your position as a board member, that's in violation of this code of conduct. Okay, I'm going to skip to meeting distractions. This one came up too. Whether a cell phone or your iPad interferes with what you're doing up there. You might have a contentious item, and there have been a few in the past 20 some odd years. I went to one and it was outrageous. Boy, which one was that? There was actually several. I forget which one. It was in the old council chambers, and it was just ugly. And it was on a park and rec issue. I can't remember what it was. Was it a skate park or Goldfield Park?
Yeah,
the ball fields.
Yeah, that was one
That was
big
pretty
one.
bad.
I remember that.
Well, now people can communicate with you while you're up there. That's if you're looking at your iPad or your phone. So what do you do with that? Do you then say, hey, John, I want to read what John's saying right now. Can you do that? Well, you can, and the city is not fully set up for that type of interaction yet. And there are some elected officials that want that to happen as a general course and a general policy. But if you're doing that, is that a distraction to the meeting? Well, it might be, depending on how many people are here, and if you keep interrupting and say, well, John says this, and he doesn't agree with board member, or Park and Rec board member Bory. If you start doing that, that's a problem. But if you're taking stuff from the outside, be careful with that. That could be a distraction, especially on your social media devices. Influence elections, that's another one that has come up, especially this past August and then also November. Can you, as a board member, basically say, hey, I'm on the board, the Park and Rec Board, and I think that, I don't know, I better not use any names, so-and-so should be the mayor in this election. Well, that's using your influence. If you just use your name, that's probably okay. Can you do something? Can you put that in the paper, or can you write that on Facebook? Well, you can, but be careful if you add Park and Rec Commissioner. That might look a little odd, and also that could upset some people. And I think it might be a violation of this. I think it's an abuse of your power. I think, let's see, going to page 4. I think staff recommendations, that you have professionals that will come to you to advise you on certain things, like the dog park, for example. Don't take their recommendations lightly. They have many years of experience, and they will tell you what they think you should vote on as a recommendation to the council. You can disagree with it, but please know that they have researched it and they are professionals. So keep that in mind when the staff brings items to your agenda. I think that's it for code of conduct. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Anybody have a question? Nope.
Conflicts of interest. This is the orange. So what is the conflict of interest? What's the object and purpose? It is to remove or limit the possibility of personal influence which might bear upon a public official's decision. The purpose is to prevent self-dealing by public officials and public employees. The financial interests of public officials or employees must not conflict with the unbiased performance of their public duties. One cannot serve two masters with conflicting interests. I'm not going to read the whole thing here all the way through the end, but I think that one I have to, because that's very important. And it's not just you, by the way. It's also, and going to the last page real quickly, page 6, H, relative. It's your relative too. Any individual within 2 degrees of kinship, including spouse, child, child's child, parent, grandparent, brother or sister of whole or half blood, and their spouses and the parent, brother, sister, or child of a spouse. I went through that a little slowly because you need to know when things come to your board, and if you have a substantial interest or any other kind of interest, the most common one, by the way, is a pecuniary or proprietary interest. So pecuniary means there's a money issue that you're going to benefit, or your relative is, or a proprietary interest. There's a property interest involved. Let's see, good example. You work for, I don't know, a softball equipment company, and they are going to profit from a contract that perhaps Park and Rec is working on. And for some reason, they come to the board to talk about their services. And there's going to be a recommendation that their contract be approved. And say you work for them, or say your spouse does. That's a conflict. That's a direct conflict. And there's certain things you have to do to basically get rid of the conflict or not even vote on the item. But that's a good example. Yes, sir.
I remember one that took place when an item was before the council and it involves a piece of property that Ed Barker and Robin owned. They're on Main Street. And she recused herself and left the meeting for that vote and then came back. I mean, that's an actual one.
That was a proprietary one, and there was a development agreement involving, I think, the facades. That money was going to be spent on improving the facade of the building. And I believe, and I think that was in 2004, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a while ago.
Yes, it may have been, well, actually, she was on the council, so I think it was actually after that. But, yes, she did declare a conflict of interest.
I mean, to me, that was always an example.
Now, why should you care? Well, there's criminal penalties, there's civil penalties, there could be forfeiture of public office. That's really more of a council-related thing. But when it comes to the board, your action, if it's tainted because there was a conflict and one of you voted on it, guess what? That item might be challenged, and then the judge could say that recommendation was bad. With the council, it might be an ultimate decision, and then that could actually influence a judge's decision on even the council's appointments or approval of a contract, for example. Now, what do you do if you have, actually, I'm going to get to that in a little bit. There are some exceptions, and there's a bunch starting on page 3. And going on to page 4. But the most common one that I've seen is J, class interest. That one comes up more than any other conflict. And that's where you have a class interest. If a member of a trade, business, profession, or other class of persons consisting of at least 10 or more members with which no greater interest than that of the other class members. So what does that mean? That means you're in a group of people of 10 or more that have the same interest. And if you do, you can still vote on the item. Good example. This goes back to 2000 or 2001. Mayor Coleman, what was before the council was a church that wanted to increase the height of their steeple. And the code only allowed up to 35 feet. They wanted to go a lot higher. And in their religion, that steeple means a lot. The height means a lot. It's definitely related to deity, and I'm not in that religion, but I can tell you that that is a genuine religious belief. So, the mayor was part of the same religion, and he was a member of that particular church. So, could he vote on it? Could he vote on a zoning change? It went through P&Z, and then it went to council with a recommendation that, yes, let's increase that steeple to whatever it was, 65 feet. I can't remember what it was exactly. So how did he vote? He voted. Boy, that sounds like a conflict. He's a member of that church. Well, it's a class of 10 or more people who have the same interest, and he's not going to profit from it from money or property. So that is an exception, and he could vote on it, and he did. Now, if you're not sure you have a conflict, the statute says you should go to the city attorney. Not because I know everything, but because the statute says so, that I do know everything. Sorry, that sounded bad, didn't it? So what happens is you give me all the information on the phone or email. I'm going to take that information and I'm going to apply the law to it. And however it falls, it falls. So if I think you have a conflict, I'm going to let you know. If I don't think you have a conflict, I'm going to let you know. If I think, say you want to vote on it and you're not sure you have a conflict, but you really want to vote on it, then I'm gonna look at the information, and then if I decide, yes, that you don't have a conflict, then I will then write up a memo that gets filed with the city clerk's office, and then I'm going to give you a copy of that memo. It's a public record. You now can rely on that memo, and you can vote on the item. So, what if I'm wrong? Well, that doesn't matter. You still can vote on it. The item could still be thrown out by a judge because there was a conflict, but if I'm wrong, I have some other issues. But if I'm right, you're good. And I've never had one of those challenged, by the way, in the 23 and a half years that I've been here. There's been a handful, hasn't been too many. So if you have a conflict and you didn't want to come to me for whatever reason, you just really know you have a conflict. You get the chair's attention right after the chair reads the item and say, Mr. Chair, I am going to conflict off because I have a conflict of interest. I am leaving the room. Do not stay in your seat. Leave the room. And the reason is, remember, Facebook's watching, and right now there's a mask requirement. There's a mask requirement. But some of you have masks on, all of you do, except for the chair. But they can, when the mask requirement goes away, they might see facial grimaces, and you're giving signals to people. That's what you'll be accused on by Facebook people. That's what I've seen. Because they're not here. They don't really know what's going on. They just know that Matt is taking pictures, and that's all they see. So you don't want that to happen. Don't get accused of influencing the decision. That's why you need to leave the room. You could watch it, go back to Matt's office and watch it. That's fine. And don't talk to anybody about it, especially if you think you have a conflict, especially if you know you have a conflict days or weeks before. Do not try to influence any of your co-members. That would be inappropriate. It would be illegal, actually. Okay, I think we can move on to the purple sheet, open meeting law, unless there's questions. Okay. So it is a public policy that meetings of public bodies be conducted openly and that notices and agendas be provided for such meetings which contain such information as is reasonably necessary to inform the public of the matters to be discussed or decided. The opening law was first enacted in 1962, and its purpose is to open the conduct of the business of government to the scrutiny of the public and to ban decisions made in secret. So what does this mean? Well, you're in a public meeting right now. And so you have a notice of the meeting, and you also have an agenda. The notice has to be posted so the public knows there's going to be a meeting. That's what the law basically says. And the agenda, while the agenda doesn't have to be posted, we do that, I believe. However, and it has to be definitive on what is being talked about. So tonight, tonight's not a good night because it's not a good example. And I'm not invited to these meetings very often. Mr. Bell did not want me at these meetings. No, he did invite me when he thought I was needed, so that was good. But say you have a contentious item. Dog park. You can't just say dog park on the agenda. You got to say what the issue is regarding the dog park. Same with ball field. If you just put ball field, I mean, in the world of park and rec people, you know what that means, but the public doesn't know which ball field you're talking about. So you have to be more specific, and that's what the open meeting law requires. Once again, why should anybody care? Who cares? This is boring statutory stuff. Well, there's some civil and criminal actions that could take place under some of the rules. It applies when there's a quorum. What does a quorum mean? Well, there's 7 of you, so that means a majority. So if there's 4 or more that meet in any given place, that's a quorum. Technically, that's a meeting. So when you come to the council meeting and you're all sitting in the row, well, before COVID, we didn't have the white sheets, but say you were sitting together talking about issues because you want to know what council's going to do to that recommendation that you sent up to the council, and you're talking about it. Well, okay, how's that look to the public? And once again, Matt is taking pictures, and occasionally, I haven't really watched, I've never been on Facebook, so I don't know how it looks to Facebook people when they see their little tiny screen on their cell phone, but does he capture everybody in the audience? I assume that, yes, occasionally he does pan to the audience. So you're going to be seen with your co-members. How's that look? Well, you already decided the case. You already made the recommendation. Is that a violation? Attorney General's probably going to say yes, even though you've already made that decision, because you're sitting together and you might be talking about other things that are park and rec related. And the Attorney General doesn't like when a quorum meets in any capacity, even at a party. Social events, you're allowed to, but I wouldn't recommend you congregating at the same table. I know the Boys and Girls Club has a huge event every year, and I don't know how many of you actually go to that, but if you do, don't sit at the same table, because someone's going to notice. They're going to say, hey, aren't all those 7 people sitting at the table on the Park and Rec Commission? I mean, that's what they're going to start thinking. So let's move on. You are a Park and Rec Commission, so you are an advisory commission. So this law does apply to you. We talked about the notice already. Emergency meetings, that doesn't come up too much here. We talked about agendas. And let's talk about minutes really quickly. Do the minutes have to be verbatim? That has been thrown in my face for about 3 years by certain individuals. And the answer is no, it does not. Unless you want Mary to take down everything you say and put it in some report. And she'll be busy on that. How long would that take you? Maybe 10 hours? Okay. So, or more. Well, you don't have to do verbatim because, first of all, these are being recorded electronically and sent out to the world. And so as long as they're posted within 2 days, that's good. They don't have to be. You still approve them, but you don't have to have verbatim minutes. Is it more convenient to have verbatim minutes for some people? Absolutely is. And is it cool to have verbatim minutes or close to verbatim? Yes, we had a former city clerk for the council who did an amazing job on the minutes. She really did. She had very, very definitive paragraphs on what happened. We had a search engine at one point where we could go look at the minutes, and it was really cool, and it went back to the 1990s or even late 80s. I think someone before her was doing it too. But once I told the city manager we don't have to do that, he said, we're not doing that because that took 10 to 20 hours a week easily to do the minutes for the council. And we don't have to, we televise them now. So technology changed that.
Oh, respect, Joel, I've got to head out of here early.
Wow, man, I really bored you. I'm sorry.
Well, I've still got my notes from the previous 10 sessions.
You have a nice evening, sir.
Thank you, sir, and thank you.
Chairman Standage, he'd let us know he was going to have to leave a little early.
Excuse me?
Frank had let us know he was going to have to just bug out a little bit early,
I knew he was going to have to.
for the record.
For the record, thank you, Frank. Have a good night, Santa. Okay, Joel, we're back to you now.
Well, I think that those are the core issues of the open meeting law. Make sure your agendas are good, the notice is good, the notice has to be posted within a certain amount of time before the meeting, and I think that's it for open meeting law.
And just for the record, our posting is on Legistar on the website. The agenda is always posted in the proper time frame. There is a general posting that the city clerk's office does for all of our boards and commissions of the date. And then if we're going to change that, that has to be updated on our website.
I have a question. Do the agendas have to be like outside in the lobby area?
The agendas don't, the notice does.
Okay.
Yeah, you do it as a courtesy,
Right.
but the law doesn't require that, but it does for the notice. You have to
Okay.
have notice of the meeting 3 days in advance.
And that's in the display cabinet outside, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Another, I think, at the city clerk's office, and I think there's one across the street.
MGC.
MGC, that's right. Okay, I think we're on parliamentary procedure.
Parliamentary procedure. That's the next item I saw.
This one's kind of fun, but not really, especially when you're doing the chair and the vice chair, because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a nasty little thing you have to go through. and that's on the last page, but what's the purpose of parliamentary procedure? It's basically to expedite the transaction of city business in an orderly fashion. There was a guy by the name of Henry Martin Robert, and I shouldn't disrespect him. He was actually a soldier in the U.S. Army. And he was sent to do a meeting at a church. And I think it was in the 1870s, and I think he was unprepared for that meeting. It didn't go so well. So he decided, I'm going to create a procedure book, and he did. And I think we're on the 11th edition now. 1999 is one the council officially adopted, but I think we're on the 11th edition now of Robert's Rules. They basically say how the meeting's supposed to be run. And the biggest issue are, well, the goals. Decision-making is done by a majority vote. Every member of the voting body has equal rights and privileges to make motions, ask questions, speak, and vote. Minority views may be heard and considered. The process is simple and direct. There is a requirement to follow the basic motion rules. Generally, one question at a time is considered. And then voting members are to be impartial and should seek recognition from the chair before speaking and should never make or engage in personal attacks with other members, staff, or the public. So it's just an orderly way of doing things. That's how it's supposed to be. They are guidelines. They're not a law. And the code, the city code says that the city attorney is a parliamentarian. So I get to decide how you would handle a motion, for example, based on Robert's rules. Or if it doesn't fit, many of the rules in Robert's rules doesn't even fit. And it's not meant for cities and towns. It really isn't. It's meant for more legislative bodies like Congress. That's what it, and also for fraternal groups. That's what it's really meant for. Like the church, that he went to the church meeting. That's what it was really meant for. And it's morphed into some other things. And some cities and towns in other states are actually abandoning Robert's rules, and they're creating their own. They're based on Robert's rules, though. I can tell you that. He was a genius. So you get to the motions, and there's simple motions. And it's on page 2, like for an amendment, tabling, continuing, recessing, withdrawing, substituting, change in order of agenda, objecting. You know, if they're not perfect motions, that's probably okay, but as long as they're generally followed, I don't typically interfere with boards and commissions or council when they make motions. There is some confusion on amendments. Say there's a motion to, approve a contract with Lagenbach Contracting for softballs or something like that. And then someone says, okay, yeah, $5,000. And then then another member says, oh, no, I don't think so. I think $7,000. So I want to make a motion to amend the first motion for $5,000. So what do you do with that? Well, it has to be seconded. And then what do you do? What do you do? Do you vote on the first motion first, and if it passes, you're good? Or do you vote on the $7,000, the increase? You vote on the amendment first and go backwards. That's how you're supposed to do it. And if the amendment doesn't pass, you still go back to the first motion, and hopefully that one passes. The amendment doesn't have to pass, but the first motion, well, nothing has to pass, but it's when someone makes a motion, they usually want it to pass. So the nomination of officers is coming up. And so this is just a summary. There's a more detailed version, which I think you're going to hand out, correct? But this goes back to when there wasn't electronic media or electronic support for meetings. That's why the chair has to open nominations, you call for a second, you vote on it, then the chair calls for nominations, and it's kind of odd how that works. You have to get recognition if you want to nominate someone, and then I nominate so-and-so for the position of. Then the chair is supposed to call for other nominations. He has to do that 3 times. And I think that's because in concert halls or wherever they used to have meetings, you couldn't hear. And I think that's why the number 3 is in there. So it's the motion or the nomination, and then 3 more times the chair has to ask, are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? If not, you close them, call for a second, and then you vote. And then basically the first person nominated gets it, as long as there's a majority. And then you basically start over with the vice chair. So that's it's a little complicated, but someday maybe we'll have our own procedures and we won't have to go through all that. But any questions?
Chairman Standage,
Yes,
may I make a comment? So you will all get a sheet that's kind of the script of how it will work, so that you would know how you make your motion. The chair has kind of a script to follow for how many times he needs to ask. So we'll have that, because we don't do it obviously that often, but it will be really well laid out.
And I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, so that's all Mary. She
That's Mary.
has worked with our other gurus in the boards and commissions worlds, and they have shared with us some of the things that the city attorney has already put together for us. So,
Okay, public records law. Once again, I go to the policy. That's what I first start with, and the purpose. Public records and other matters in the custody of any public officer shall be open to inspection for any person at all times during business hours. The law serves to open government activity to public scrutiny. The core purpose is to allow public access to official records and other governmental information so that the public may monitor the performance of government officials and their employees. So, what does all that mean? Well, I hate the word because it's been overused so much in the last 10 years, or actually before that. Transparency. I hate that word because it's been overused, but that's what it is. What you do on record, not just the open meeting law, but also what paperwork you have. Say you have you're going to make a recommendation on, I go back to the dog park, on the engineer. And you're going to recommend which engineer is going to get the job because you did a bid on it. Well, those bids, those bid documents are public records, and people get to see those. Not just you, but the public can see those. And so if someone wants to get those records, if they're not on your agenda and they're an item that someone could click on, someone could ask for a public record request, and they can get those. Why should anybody care? Well, I'm not going to read all this, but if there's a denial to look at the record or get a copy, there could be consequences. And it's not pleasant. The law is definitely against the cities and towns on this. There could be, an example would be, we had a lawsuit and there was a settlement agreement. And this was an outside counsel. It wasn't me. It was, we have a pool of cities and towns, and we contract with a company called Southwest Risk, Berkeley Risk Services, and they handle the lawsuit. That's what our contract does for certain types of things, like torts where there's someone injured. Well, there was a shooting back in 2000 by a police officer, and the case got settled. And the press heard about it, and they said, hey, we want to see that settlement agreement. We want to see how much the city is paying, or the insurance company. Well, the attorney wouldn't give it up. He said, oh, no, you can't have that. There's a confidentiality clause in that agreement. It means that can't be given up. And he thought that immunized giving out that agreement. Well, it didn't. It did not. We went to court over it, and the city, the attorney, it was a big law firm, First Amendment law firm, Perkins and Coie, I think. Very, very notable law firm, very prestigious. They were charging $500 an hour, whatever it was. And the city had to pay $26,000 for something that should have been given up in 2 minutes. So I didn't want to pay it, but I think the pool paid it, but then our premiums went up. So, but anyway, that's what happened. And under the law, they used this law to say, hey, you didn't give it out. You certainly didn't do it promptly because you didn't do it. And that became a problem. Public record. What is a public record? Well, tonight, or whenever you're writing down on documents that you might get from Mary, and it's on a case, or it's involving the park and rec activities, or the discussions, that's a public record. You're supposed to keep that. You're supposed to really, after the recommendation, you should be giving everything to the director, and she's supposed to keep it for at least 3 years. I think that's your archive public records period, correct? Okay. Yeah, the state regulates that. The state says certain records have to be kept for so many years, and we're stuck to that. It's a schedule we have to keep to. Anyway, if you're writing anything down, be careful what you write down. If you're just taking notes, you say, oh, that's not a public record. That was just from my understanding. No, that's a public record because you are an appointed member by the council. So whatever you do, whatever notes you take, that's a public record. And it's not just paperwork. Say it's a contentious item, or even if it's not, and you're just typing away. Say Wayne is typing away to Judy on Facebook, and you're looking at your device while we're doing this, or even if you're not in session. Is that a public record? And you're saying how you feel about something, and is that a public record? It is, because it involves your capacity as a park and rec board member, and you're talking about an item. That is a public item. So, and you're talking to another board member. That is definitely an issue that needs to be rectified. And what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to save that. Even if it's on your own personal device, you're supposed to save that, because if a public record request comes in, it goes to the city clerk, and then the city clerk sends it out to whoever's affected by that, or whoever she might think has a record. And there have been public record requests that ask for electronic copies of emails, text messages. It's hard to keep text messages, but someday it won't be. And then everything you say will be there. But emails, definitely. That has happened to council, by the way. Council had to basically look at their personal device and then send that to the clerk, and then they get printed out, and I'm supposed to look at them. I'm supposed to look at all of them, actually, because if it's on a personal device, I'm supposed to look at those and decide what's personal and what's city, if you're using that as your device for city business. You don't want me looking at your personal stuff, I know that, but the law basically says the city attorney is supposed to look that over, and I decide whether it goes out or not, and then they could challenge it. So,
Joel, if a person doesn't communicate by that way, there would be no record.
Correct. But some people do.
Well,
And
that's true. Some people
More
do, but
and
there are
more.
Another question for you, like I'm sitting here and I'm checking off to stay in line with the agenda. Is that a record? It's just a check mark.
Technically, it is. It's a document that you're using to help you
Right.
through the meeting. Technically, it is.
Okay, well, I'll give my copies to Mary at the end of the meetings from now on.
Chairman Standage, could I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's partly, you all have your binder that you can turn back into Mary.
Right.
So, keep your items in that, especially if you need some of your notes maybe for you want to think about it or whatever, and you want to refresh your memory. But then it's in your binder, and then that way, when that gets turned in to Mary, they're all in that location. When that issue is over, they can certainly be saved with the public record or whatever.
Right.
I think that's a little bit more clarification even than I remember, so I think that's great information for us to have.
Well, I was just
No,
wondering
that's
how they
great
would
question.
technically look at
Look
them.
in your binder, the ones that get turned back into me,
Right. Okay.
I have a question. I can see this program tomorrow on TV. Then I take my notes. Is that probably correct? Because I took a note after this meeting.
If you're taking notes and if the item's going
I
to come
don't
up,
take it here, but I take it tomorrow.
if the item's going to come up again and you're taking notes, say you missed the meeting and you're taking notes from a few days later, and you know it's going to come up at another meeting, technically, yes, that's a public record.
Okay, see, that was my question, because I saw the meeting of yesterday, a lot of things like this, and I put in my head, I didn't write it down. Okay,
Right.
I said, I don't write it down, I keep it,
Yeah, that's a public record.
yeah.
But not what's in your head.
Not within,
Not yet.
No, I cannot
Not yet.
open
Not
up
yet.
here.
Not yet.
No, no.
Now-
I was just wondering about how that would be, because the only thing I've ever done close to that is just, you know, like today's new business. Okay, as I'm going down, I have it checked that we've already, you're discussing it now, for example.
Right, but say you have a real busy agenda. Say you have 30 things. And say you missed one. And it was so busy and there were 60 people in here complaining about something. So you just rush through the agenda. Someone might want to see that record, saying, well,
Okay.
I know he checks it off, but he didn't do that and my item didn't get heard. Hopefully one of us would catch it, but what if we don't? And that's why that person might want it. And they don't have to say why they want the record.
Yeah.
And the disclosure part, when you get the email, you'll get it from Liz or probably the city clerk. You have to do it promptly. That's the word the legislature decided to use. They don't say within 10 days. They should have said within so many days, like the federal, you've heard of the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
Some people think that applies to everything. Well, it doesn't. That doesn't apply to Arizona because it's a federal statute.
Right.
However, when the Public Record Act of Arizona doesn't cover a particular issue, and you can look to the Freedom of Information Act, then we have to look at the Freedom of Information Act for that particular issue. But they have a 10-day time period, just like California does. And California, in their statute, basically says within 10 days, you have to give it up. So this says promptly. What does that mean? Promptly means quick to act or do what is required or without delay. So does that mean when I get 1,000 pages, because all of you are taking notes, and now I'm going to have to go look at that, and I get a stack of stuff, am I supposed to quit everything that I'm doing? If I'm in the middle of state land annexation issues, am I supposed to just stop doing the state land stuff and work on this public record request? The answer is yes, I am, because the word promptly does that. And if I don't, and I put it off for 3 weeks, and they've been contacting me saying, where is it, where is it, where is it? Oh, it's coming, it's coming. That's not promptly. And can they then go to court and get attorney fees if they have an attorney that had to file a lawsuit? Yes, they can. So let's move on. Who can obtain a public record? Anybody can, and once again, they don't have to say why they want the document. Can you charge? Yes, there's certain fees you can charge. There's a commercial fee or a non-commercial. Right now, the city charges 25 cents per page. So even if it's an electronic request, we get these all the time from the press. And the press says, oh, we're not subject to that. A lot of press members say that because we're First Amendment. We believe in the rights of people, and we always state the truth. So we don't have to give you any money for this because we're First Amendment people. Well, that's not true. But they're non-commercial. They're not commercial. The non-commercial rate is 25 cents a page. The commercial rate is 50 cents a page. And so even electronically, this shows up as 4 pages. Well, we get to charge, even though we're sending it electronically, 25 cents a page. We can do that. And we do that. And other cities and towns do it. Someday the legislature is going to play with that too, saying, oh, if it's electronic, then you can't charge a dime. Someday that's going to happen because you have a hostile legislature that does not like cities and towns, and they are still in control. So I better move on before I say anything else. Other than that, I think I left you a whole bunch of cases that are really fun to read. And if you ever want a copy of these cases, just call me and I'll get you a copy. You could probably Google them anyway and get them, but I'll certainly give you an official copy from Westlaw because there's some really good cases in here. I think that's it. Are there any questions?
I have one question. If they wanted to do a public record request, how do they go about that?
There's a form they file with the city clerk's office, and it's sometimes if they don't do the form and it's just an email, we'll accept the email, but we really want the form to get their information, and we need to know what they want. They just say, I want everything you have on the dog park. And if they say that, we're going to say, I'm sorry, that's too broad. You need to be more specific. Hopefully they'll put a year in there, or they'll say a time period, because that would be, that's called a research request. And the law does not require that we do research. They're supposed to identify the document as best as they can, and we are supposed to try to get that document for them. But we don't have to do research. If it's a burdensome request, we can actually go to court and say it's too burdensome. But that hasn't really happened. We hadn't had to go to court to do that because usually we talk to them and say, hey, can you just change your request so we know what you really, really want? Because we're just guessing what you want because we shouldn't have to guess. But there is a form that we use, and other cities also use a form.
Perfect. And are public requests public? So could the public see who requested something?
Yes. In fact, there have been requests for public record request forms.
Okay.
There has been, absolutely. And in my opinion, those are completely public. I will not redact anything on that. Not the person's name, not the person's address, because they are putting themselves in, they're inserting themselves into the public process by doing that. And if they take the risk every time they do a public record request, and I think it's even their phone number, even their email, even though those are private things, they have now basically taken the cover off and everybody gets to see that. That's what my opinion is. Some people disagree with me on that, but I think it's in the best interest that that should be available.
Any other questions for Joel? Okay, Joel, thank you for your time. So we move to our next item, which is update on state trust land auction.
I haven't seen it.
Or do you have anything you want to do on that this time?
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Standage. So just wanted to give you a quick update, as I promised before, about the state land auction that took place. The city manager's office actually did a really great video, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm not sure if anybody has seen it. I think it's out there. It's on our YouTube channel. But this does a great job of explaining it in just a short version of what's happened and how that process and what's going to be happening next. So I'm just going to play that. It's about 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes.
Welcome to A Great Day in AJ. I'm Brian Powell, City Manager, City of Apache Junction. Last Wednesday, 4 square miles of land that's just south of Elliott Road near Ironwood Road sold for about $245 million to a developer. And it went through an auction through the state land process, and the highest bidder was a group that's called D.R. Horton. And let me show you a little bit about this area. I'm going to introduce you to Larry Kirch, our Development Services Director. For everyone's orientation, this is the city of Apache Junction up here. Here is the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, and then here are the 4 square miles. I'm going to zoom in on those, and then I'm going to turn it over to Larry Kirch, or maybe Larry. This is, again, Larry, Will you show us exactly where the affected area is, and then maybe we can zoom back out and show exactly how far away that is from
Sure,
from the
sure. So this is the 4 square miles, as Brian said. This is Elliott Road on the north, it's Ray Road on the south. Each of these blocks are 4 square miles. The blue, this is off the State Land Trust website, so all this blue is all state trust land. So the city will be annexing this along with additional land up against the CAP canal down to where the 24 is going to come through. So the land really from the heart of downtown is really about 5 or 6 miles away.
And Larry, why do you think, so these areas then are all state land areas, correct?
Correct.
Why were these 4 selected versus these 4, or even some of these up closer to baseline?
Well, from the developer, and I think from the state standpoint, is really what is the marketability. So in the past, the city had looked at a development up in here. Really, the market really has shifted, I think, because of the Gateway, Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. You have Eastmark that's over here that's selling, that's like the top selling development in the country. And so the proximity of that development here, seeing the market really more down in this area as opposed. I think this will happen, of course, but with the extension of the 24 is going to go east of the CAP canal, and it's going to connect up with the north-south corridor that's going to come up from Eloy up to the 60. So I think the real estate market has kind of determined that that's really where the next big market play is for the East Valley.
Thank you. And then Larry, you mentioned the 24. Do you think that when that's completed, that'll help with the alleviation of the 30,000 or so car traffics that come up Ironwood?
Right, so the environmental impact statement is done, the acquisition is done. That road, the 24, is going to get extended to Ironwood. So right now we have all these cars going to Santan Valley. Most of those cars will peel off, others will, depending on where they work in the valley. They may choose to continue up Ironwood till they get to the 60, but a large portion of the traffic is going to come off of at Ironwood and go west up to the 202 loop.
All right. So timing, let's talk timing a little bit.
Sure.
So if we're talking about the timeline of these 4 square miles, and we can talk at another date about water, or we could talk about connectivity, or we could talk about other issues, but today I want to ask you, when will residents see maybe dirt moving, or when will we see any type of movement down there?
Okay, well, we've already really, it's taken about 18 months just to get to the auction. So developers approached the state 18 months ago. We finally had the auction last week. After that, there's annexation to take place, there's zoning that has to be put in place, there's engineering that has to be done. So it's probably going to take 6 to 8 months just to do the annexation, some of the preliminary engineering. I know the developers would like to time housing development along with the timing of the 24. So they want to see rooftops when the 24 is extended. So it's roughly going to be 18 to 24 months before people might go out and say, hey, I want to go buy a house in this new development.
One last thing, Larry, the area that's in what we know in our community is the Y area. What is the impact in that area?
So again, we mentioned that really the 4 square miles that's going to happen first, that's a long ways away from the other parts of the city. This is the downtown. This is what we call the Y area with the Apache Trail, Old West Highway. This is also state land. But in our general plan, we really call for conserving that state land, really not having houses up there. So really that development that's happening here is quite a ways away, 6, 7 miles away from the more rural part of the city. And I think the development, which I think really kind of keeps that kind of way of life ongoing, because this area is not going to be under development pressure. The development pressure is going to be down here.
Our hope today is that that's answered a few questions what about this state land that happened and where it is at in the timeline. We'll come forward on future Great Day in AJ's to talk a little bit more about other impacts that there could be of this area. And Larry, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
So just thought that'd be, so we're really in the very beginning phases. The auction had happened in early November. And they have begun they've been having many conversations with the developers and with the state on what might be there. But now it's time to start really talking about real things. So our general plan dictates a lot of what is going to happen and what areas are available. Our active transportation plan, which you all were involved in, that were on the commission at that time, that's in place, sharing how roads in the future are built. So in new development, developers have to take into consideration the bike lanes and some of those sidewalks and some of those different types of aspects. We'll be able to share more of that with you as we get going through this. I have asked Larry Kirch, our Development Services Director, if he'll come to one of our future meetings. So probably in March or April, sometime whenever he has a little bit more information that he could kind of share and give you some time to think about what are some of your questions, how does it affect parks and facilities. We can definitely share what that's going to look like. And so he's happy to come and speak with us at a future date when we have a little bit more details. Kind of bear in mind that this is really exciting news for our city, just to have more housetops. So in order to get more businesses, you have to have more people, a more dense population, so that way you can support those businesses that are coming in. That's the one thing that we've lacked for a very long time because we only had small pockets of areas for development, and now we have all of this growth. So that's just one chunk of it. As they were talking about in that video, once those 4 square miles happen, then other things around it are going, once they see that that's going well, that just makes that even that much more viable. One of the things that's really great for us, so for all construction, we get our development fees based on, I usually take this off when I'm up here. I was trying to figure out what was different. Usually...
it muffles you.
that, and it also moves. Okay. For that development fee money that we use to invest in new parks and new areas, new capital projects for Parks and Recreation, all of those buildings are really going to help us to be able to support some of our existing parks as well as building new facilities. We also know that the developers will be planning for parks and recreational facilities in that whole area. We will certainly be having conversations with them. Some of those will be private areas for private neighborhoods, and others will be more common areas for the community. I think I have up, let's see here. Yes. So we'll try to zoom in on this a little bit to give you a better idea. So with this whole area south of the 60 was kind of designed long ago, and the state has been involved in talking about it and getting ideas of what we want. We have a lot of our washes and a lot of really great recreational opportunities with some of those trails, as well as anything along the wash and riparian areas will be a great recreational asset, as well as the CAP canal. We've talked previously in other Parks and Rec commissions meetings that the CAP trail is something that goes from basically our point all through Pinal County, the CAP trail. I know you were very involved with that. We are very committed to continuing that, and so that one is one that will stretch throughout the entire of Pinal County, and we're kind of the end of Pinal County for the CAP trail, but this will be an ideal location for that, just to provide some recreational multi-purpose trails, surfaces for biking, hiking, walking, equestrians. So they will be looking at, in this area, what are they going to do along this, this little gray area here is some of the smaller washes. What are they going to be adding in there? And those will probably be more of a community, a community-wide interest, not so much individual for their homeowners. Some of those will be things that they might decide that they're going to take care of and they're open to the community, or they might be turning them over to the city. And those are things we don't know yet. Those will be part of some of those discussions, but definitely some of the things that we want to be keeping in mind and paying attention to as we go about. We are talking with many of the other cities that have worked with several of these particular developers. What worked well? City of Mesa worked very closely with the whole Eastmark development. There are City of Mesa parks and open spaces in Eastmark that the city maintains, as well as areas that the Eastmark some of those individual HOAs maintain. And so we'll be working with some of those folks just to kind of see, what are the best practices and what do they recommend that we think about as we continue through this process. This is the part that was auctioned, and then I just wanted to point out everything else basically that's in color, and then it's it's lined in this red. That's all other state trust land that was retained by the state. They've chosen not to put it up for auction yet. They focused on these 4 square miles, but those will be some of the next areas possibly that will happen. The color coding, just so you know, comes from our land use from our general plan. So those are some of the different types of land uses that are here. All of the yellow and yellowish are different types of residential, medium residential types of things. So that's the part that they're developing right at this moment in time. Do you have any questions?
Liz, could you bring it down just a little?
Like this way or up?
There we go.
Okay.
Section 3 there, which is just
it,
off of
right here?
Ironwood. No, you're too far over with the arrow. 3, right there, you're on it.
5. Yeah.
That's, isn't that flood control and the sewer?
Yeah, so
district?
so a lot of those things will be taken into consideration. So we do have a lot of Maricopa County Flood Control District stuff. The CAP canal is another major thing that has to be mitigated and make sure that it fits into the plan. But yeah, there is a major flood control structure as well as a whole, the flood control plane in here. What else did you mention? You said something else. Oh, the sewer district.
The sewer district.
Yeah, they're in here someplace. Where are we at?
Close
Ironwood?
to the CAP. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
It could be there. They could be partial into below 3 there.
Well,
I think they're more over this way.
There you go. There you go. That section there should be about where the sewer is.
yeah.
Another item I've thought of, talk with Kent Taylor because they've been addressing riparian and open space issues for quite a while, and along with game and fish as to migration routes for the wildlife.
Absolutely.
Just a
Yeah,
thought.
no, I think that's a great point. And we have also talked extensively with the Sun Corridor Trail folks. There's been a whole lot of different open space and looking at the areas, preserving some of that, finding recreational opportunities, but also using planned development so that way we do protect some of, those are some great examples of migration of different wildlife and making sure that we are paying attention to some of that. And so we've done a lot of talks through that group with Queen Creek and Santan Valley and some of the areas here with Mesa. So very good thing to bring up.
I'm on top of you there,
Yeah.
watching it.
Good deal.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to bring up to her?
Nope.
Liz, do you have anything to add?
Nope, that's it as of now. That's my level of knowledge in it. As he mentioned, they will have several of these. So you might just want to make sure you subscribe to the City of AJ Facebook page. We'll make sure we try to share it as well. But I think some of their future ones are going to talk about, people are concerned about, do we have enough water? What is happening with the sewer district? Bryant did share with us that there is a very healthy plan. We know for sure this 4 square miles is well within our water resources and the plans that we have. Right. As we talk about those other areas, there are other things that have to happen, I think, in order to feel that level of confidence. But there are a lot of things happening with SRP and some different entities that Bryant will probably share in one of the future videos. He has much more knowledge on that. But that also might fall into some of that area of why was there only 4 square miles? Why did they pick this? Those are all different things that factor into that. So that's the only other thing I wanted to mention is that the city will be updating pretty frequently on what's happening overall.
Sorry, Liz, but those are predominantly houses. Those aren't
businesses, right? I know that you said we need more rooftops for
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah, so this area is all zoned for residential, so that's what's going to come in place here, as well as recreational amenities associated with that. I think some more of this, I think it's the purple, yeah. So this is adding on to the tech corridor that is coming from the Mesa area, is what I'd heard. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Isn't the tech corridor starting with like,
But
I've always known it as Williams, but it's, Gateway.
But
I believe so, but I will say that would be a great, think of those kinds of questions. So when
Yeah.
we bring Larry, he will have so many more true details of what that could look like. So save that question for him.
yeah, I'm looking at those 4 square miles. Would that mean that they're going to be shopping in Queen Creek versus shopping up toward AJ?
Well, and you can't see it on here, but keep in mind, so this is Williamsfield, Ray. Honestly, I couldn't tell you how much farther down here Queen Creek is.
Isn't it
So-
dividing line, State Route 24?
Yeah, so they might be doing grocery shopping there in those first couple of years, just like whenever things were built in Johnson Ranch. You know, everybody drove far to get to where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
But then those houses are what brought some of the other types of industry and things like that there nearby. So for us, having those houses and then bringing in some of the stuff, I think some of that is more designed here near the US 60 and in some of these other areas. I honestly couldn't tell you what exactly is planned there as of right now. So I don't know. That's certainly a great observation. And would be another great question for Larry Kirch when he comes.
Okay.
So write it down and don't forget.
I have a question
Okay.
that I heard about it. Just on the baseline between Stolberhack, Hiramwood, and everything there, they fixing up the road now. They say that sewer lines and everything south of the baseline is going to be starting in about 6-7 months from now. So this way, they can start building houses. Is that true?
I do not know that. I don't know anything about that.
All right.
So again, that'd be a good one to write down and ask Larry or see. I think that some of the other topics is sewer, water, what is that going to look like? So I think those would be great questions for them. Also, there are a lot of city council meetings. You know, I would just probably take a look at what their agendas are. What are going to be some of the topics that are coming about that? And then you also know Larry Kirch fairly well. I think those would be great questions that you could ask him, and he could help you out with some of that.
I asked him the question 2 weeks ago. It was premature. He didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
Because I researched the area.
Good, yeah, well, yes, I know you've been very interested in baseline, as we talked about active transportation.
I
and-
live there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else that I can not answer for you? I'm so sorry. I really wanted you guys just to get some of this initial information. You can
Right.
start thinking of what your questions are, and we will definitely we'll bring some experts to one of our future meetings for you. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
That
you.
completes that part of the agenda, folks. Our next item is call to the public, but we don't have any public. So we'll go on from that one. Our next item is future agenda items. Does anybody have something in particular they would like to see added next time?
Not really. The agenda was just talking about what's going to happen in the baseline and everything, because I see they're working, they already fixed up the road, and now they're,
Okay.
I think we could work, maybe the way it relates to us is that the whole baseline project.
Yes.
If it's an extension of our active transportation plan, we can learn a little bit about, are there bike lanes, are there those kinds of things, and then also answer some of that other question. So I can see if that's something I can find out. And if it's not something we can add to our agenda, it might be something I can at least get the information for you.
but anyhow, around the baseline, they already fixed up the road and they make the bike lanes too. They're there already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Except couple little pieces, they have no asphalt
Right,
yet.
right. So baseline
Yeah.
road. Chairman Standage, if I could ask, I'd like for us, well, we will be putting the elections for chair and vice chair on the agenda for January. And we will send you out just some basic information on that, just so that people are prepared and ready of what the process is like in January for nominating and who's interested in those kinds of things. Just as a reminder, if I do send out some information to you, if you have a question, you can reply to me or you can reply to Mary. Just don't reply all on some of those ones, is all.
Okay.
I should have asked him. I was wondering if they just reply all when they say they're not going to be here, that should be fine. Yeah, so as long as it's not talking about an issue, I think is fine.
Okay. All right, that completes that. The only future agenda item will be for our officer positions next meeting.
And then, I'm sorry, I have a couple others. So we will be doing our fee study. We are looking at commercial fees. I know we brought this up with our Parks and Rec Commission previously, almost 18 months ago, and maybe a year ago. But we are pairing it with our overall market study. We will be receiving direction from City Council on whether they want us to be looking at all of that. We are looking at our comparator cities, at what they are doing current. So we'll talk about that. So that's going to be a future, not talking about it. It needs to be a future agenda item. And then, like we said before, I will be inviting Larry Kirch. I'm not sure that it'll be the next meeting, but one of our February or March meetings, we'll invite Larry Kirch to talk about state trust land.
Okay. Nothing else. Okay, we adjourn the meeting here at 7:27, and thank you all for attending.